Now, in this lecture on capital budget, now what we're really talking about is what's known as conflicting signals. And that occurs when net present value tells you to take one project, rate of return tells you to pick another project. And these would be mutually exclusive projects. You can only choose one. And which technique do you use to decide which project to take? Now, in the previous video, I had laid out all the information about two projects, Projects A and Project B. Now, Project B had a net present value of $41,220 and had a rate of return of 19.62. Project A had a net present value of $84.33 and a rate of return of 24%. Now, with that net present value and internal rate of return information, we put on this graph what's called an NPV profile, which is basically a line you draw between net present value and rate of return. And so for Project B, I would start here and draw the line to its rate of return here. And that line now is what's called the NPV profile. The NPV profile for Project A would be the line from its net present value to its internal rate of return at 24%. And again, that line would be the NPV profile for Project A. Now, you can see the lines cross right there. Now, not surprisingly, what do they refer to that as? The indifference point. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to calculate the indifference point. But I've already done that. I'm telling you the indifference point is going to turn out to be 18.97%. Now, how do you use indifference point to make a decision? Well, anytime the weighted average cost of capital is less than the indifference point, you want to use NPV. So in this particular problem, recall that the weighted average cost of capital was 15%. So 15% is less than the indifference point. We would want to go with net present value. If the weighted average cost of capital were greater than the indifference point, that is, if it was over here somewhere, weighted average cost of capital, you would want to go with this line, which means you choose on the basis of internal rate of return. So as a student now, you'd understand that that shaded line right there, that's indeed kind of the place where you always want to be. That's the line you always want to be on. So if you're to this side of the indifference point, that line dominates that line. And to use this and to choose this project, you'd have to use net present value. If you're to the right of the indifference point, you'd want to be on this line here. But to be on that line, you'd have to use internal rate of return. And internal rate of return would tell us to take Project A. So again, this is called indifference point analysis. The indifference point is part of what's called an NPV profile. So when you have conflicting signals, these NPV profiles will cross, and that's where you get this indifference point. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how you calculate the indifference point. But just as a student, as a decision maker now, understand that if your cost of capital is less than the indifference point, you choose on the basis of net present value. If your weighted average cost of capital is greater than the indifference point, you choose on the basis of internal rate of return.